Hello, everyone. Welcome to Detroit Agate. I'm Timothy Smith.
And I'm Eugene Clark. And we have a third host whose name is Terry Burns. There's a picture of him right there. And he is a singer, musician, and all-around artist extraordinaire. He does sculpture, paintings, drawings, and I hear he's a pretty good chef in the kitchen, if I'm not mistaken.
All right.
And you're a pretty good chef, Mr. Timothy.
I'm good at reheating pizza. So yeah, I like to cook. My wife is really the cook in the family, without any doubt whatsoever. She is the master of that stuff, and so she
Ah,
gets all the credit. But I certainly enjoy her cooking. So I'm a lucky guy. Yeah.
wow.
And how about you, Mr. Clark? Are you the cook in your family, the chef?
I've just sort of taken on the role as needed because,
Hmm.
as the pandemic hit and our roles in the household sort of shifted based on job scenarios, I just picked up the slack and I do that whenever I have to. So I cooked dinner tonight.
Good for you. Good. All right, that's good. You're a good man. Good man. I just
Uh,
bought Thai and I pizza, so but that's cool.
uh,
That's sufficient for us, so that's fine.
it's always a great night for pizza in my book.
Mhm.
And, I'm wearing my Detroit shirt. Of course, it's for the Detroit Tigers, who just swept another series, this one with San Francisco. Uh, but, you know, when we're talking about Detroit, there's some really good pizza around. So
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
guessing that you and I, in a future podcast, will probably tackle that subject,
I would
share some of our favorite pizza joints in Detroit.
I would I would go on that endeavor with extreme enthusiasm. That's great.
Mm.
Yes,
Well,
for sure. Because I mean, there are some legendary places around here with that, and Detroit has its own flavor for pizza and its own style. Like other cities have their own sort of identity with it. And I think, when I hear other people in other parts of the country say, "Ooh, Detroit style pizza," I'm like, "You know about that?" They're like, "Oh yeah." So square pizza and all these things, just like just the way it's layered on top, it's like very unique. And me being from the East Coast and stuff, our pizza over there is a little different, and so I've come to appreciate different pizzas from around the country and how it's approached. So Detroit definitely has its own flag in that, you know, planted in that category for sure. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy that one. That's definitely, you know.
well, Timothy, you're talking about the layers of pizza pertaining to a culinary delight here in Detroit. Um, I want to talk about layers of our podcast in
Hmm.
terms of you and myself and our third host, Terry,
Hmm.
who is not feeling good. He's a little under the weather. So we wish him a get well, Terry. And
Get well,
we're
Terry.
thinking of you. And we can't wait till you're on the podcast with us because you definitely have so much to bring to the mix for all
Yeah,
the things that we're going to
cannot
talk
wait
about.
for you to get here for sure. Yes,
So
Terry.
when we say Detroit agate, the word agate is a geological term
Hmm.
speaking about, layers. Detroit agate happens to be a reference to the layers of automotive paint that were sort of left behind from back in the day that people have discovered that then now people have actually turned into jewelry the same way they would with the precious gemstone. So it
Hmm.
makes total sense to me being from here.
Hmm.
However, you mentioned you're from the East Coast. How
Hmm.
does that feel to you when you hear about this thick chunk of automotive paint that you can see all the different colors, and that people are making jewelry out of it? But
Oh,
what do you think about
fascinating. I love it in multiple levels because Detroit, with its storied history of the automotive, industrial complex, and how it really drove. It was literally the engine of industry for this country for a long, long time. And just you showed me the sample one time of that piece of jewelry, the paint, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful image. And it's just to me it makes total sense, and how after all the years of industrial strength and proficiency that has come out of Detroit and its surrounding areas, that's just it makes the whole historical context and creative context of that piece that you showed me. I mean, it makes total sense, and I think it's just wonderful how it's being repurposed for something that's beautiful, and
Yeah.
all those layers of paint and how it looks like a cross section of like a geode or something that it just looked really, really like a geological sort of formation, but it's a man-made object, and it was turned into this glob of paint that was pulled out of the ground and just kind of, sliced and made into this beautiful something that's it doesn't have an exact duplicate. It can't. So
That's right.
it's truly unique. Truly
Yeah.
each one is truly unique. So I love it.
So we're gonna really capitalize on what you just said, and we're going to take the notion of the automotive paint layers that were built up that people now use for these beautiful pieces of jewelry,
Hmm.
precious commodity, this precious, almost like a precious stone, if we
Yeah.
may. And we're going to apply it to all the things that we want to talk about. You, myself, and Terry, our interests. We all met at the Atelier in Royal Oak, which is an art
Hmm.
studio, and we're all artists. And so, in coming together, we found that we love to talk about art. We like to make art, but then, in addition to that, there was a connection of music that I noticed all three of us had, and
Hmm.
so we're going to expand on that. We're going to do art, music, a little bit of talking about food as we just did,
Oh yeah.
culture in and around Detroit, because this is where we're doing the show. It doesn't mean we can't, you know, leave the city limits sometimes and talk about
Hmm.
things that are happening in the state of Michigan or on the East Coast, as
Hmm.
you can bring that to our attention.
Hmm.
So here it is, our first time doing a podcast together. And, if there's anybody that lands on this podcast and listens to us, maybe they want to know a little bit more about each of us. So I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to just kind of give that, 30 words or less thing.
My bio. Oh, oh, my name is Timothy Smith. I'm married. I have two adult children, and live outside of Detroit in Troy, Michigan. And I met Eugene um, a year or two ago at the Italian Railroad. Like you said, I'm originally from the East Coast, from Delaware, the Philadelphia area, and spent my life there. I lived in the Northeast, lived in Boston, New York, for many years. I've been in this area now, like I said, about 12 years, and love it. I've been exploring Michigan ever since we landed here, and haven't really been to the UP as much as I have. I wish I had. I've been to St. Ignace. That's as far as I got, which is just over the bridge. So technically, I was there, but not really. So, but I've been all over the state so far, and I just love it here. Just it's a beautiful place. And I'm really glad that we're here. It's perfect as far as I'm concerned. I'm really looking forward to our adventure together with this, Eugene, with you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, speaking of adventures, you and I are going to take an adventure next week in the car, a little day driving trip to Grand Rapids, because everything is grand in Grand Rapids. I don't know
It's
if
very
you knew
rapid too. Yes.
that. So it's great to hear some of your background, and as our podcasts, increase, your story will definitely unfold, just like Detroit Agate. The title,
Mhm.
"The Layers of Timothy Smith," will be revealed,
Uh-oh.
and it's going to be exciting. Uh,
That's one word
I
for it. Yeah, okay. All right.
I am a Detroiter, born and bred in the city limits, where my parents still live to this day. It's the 7 in Greenfield, Northwest Detroit area. Went to Benedictine High School and Ludington Middle School, which was a really great sort of type of artsy type of a middle school, where we got to do, we had wood shop and we had art class and we had theater and we didn't really have a music program. That was taken away, but we found ways at the school to integrate music anyway. And we always put on big big productions, big theatrical productions and stuff like that. And then the art teacher was really generous in her time, and just encouraged us immensely. I think that's really where my art interest was born. And then I went to the College for Creative Studies out of high school, which is in downtown Detroit. I got my master's over at Wayne in art, and been teaching art ever since. A plethora of years, as we like to say.
That's
But
right.
but it's such a pleasure to be on this podcast with you, Timothy, because you and I, one of the things that really we found as a connection, besides our love for art and music, was that there was a time when I moved to New York City to see what it would be like to be a living, working, breathing artist in New York. Because you hear about it, you're like, well, maybe I should put my money where my mouth is and go out there and try it.
Yeah.
So come to find out, as we're talking, you were in New York at the same time, pounding the pavement and doing all kinds of great stuff. Tell us about that.
Yep. At the time when you were there, I was enrolled in a graduate school at School of Visual Arts, and I was there from '95 to '97. I got my master's there, MFA in illustration as visual essay, and studied under Marshall Arisman, Carl Totolo, Thomas Woodruff, Carol Fabricatori, and others. And
those are huge names, by the way, people.
They're big names. Stephen
Look
Heller.
them.
I mean, a lot of these guys. I mean, he was the art director of New York Times Book Review for many, many years, and I got to meet all kinds of famous artists and illustrators in New York. And my classmates were all very talented people, and we're still in touch today after all these years. And even the class before and after us, we still talk, and it's just great. And I like seeing their names pop up on like the who's who and all that, and it's just wonderful to see that they're still out there cranking it out and doing the work. But I was in New York at the time. I lived there for many years and worked there actually most of the time. I did live in New Jersey a big chunk of that time, but I worked in New York the entire time I lived over there. And but yeah, I was at School of Visual Arts. That was a great experience in my life, and I'm sure that you and I cross paths on the sidewalk somewhere, or because you're in the same neighborhood I was. This is Chelsea, and I know you worked over there, and so I'm certain that we cross paths. If you're involved with galleries, and I was always going to galleries, we must have been sipping wine from the same bar at some point, some reception. Had to be such a weird coincidence. I mean, it's very, 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 very possible that happened, and so. That's crazy, but here we are.
Yeah.
We met each other all this time later, and we got to talk about that parallel. So I think it's cool, meant to be.
Yeah. Well, New York is the center of the art world. A lot of people would agree to that. I mean, there are some other places that we could say the same thing about, like Paris, definitely, and LA, and places that I haven't named yet, but those are some that just come to mind. But definitely New York is the center of the art world, really, when it comes to my experience of working in a gallery in the Chelsea district. When a show would take place in that gallery, people would start contacting the gallery from all over the world, collectors, and they would be interested in certain pieces by a particular artist that was showing. And if the show sold out, which it did, then because that particular artist was now considered the next who's who of their collection, they would order their next painting sight unseen. They would just say, okay, well, put me on the list for the next painting, which the artist hadn't created yet. And
that means they've made it, and I'm really proud to hear that for them. It was good.
I was blown away by that, and just to think how collectors see the art world as opposed to the way we see the art world. It's so different. So to sort of get that, be a fly on the wall and get that little window into that. The other thing was the curators from the Whitney would walk into the gallery unannounced to see the shows. And so I got to be in the space while they were there, and I got to sort of get the feel for what it was like to sort of understand how the curators see the art world and the artists that are up and coming, as opposed to the collectors that I just mentioned. And those are two really huge and important groups of people that influence the art world greatly, to the point where, the things that we sort of recognize as important in art history from, let's just say right now to maybe back in the 50s or 60s, that was all contributed based on collectors and curators, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
a lot of it. So, we're talking about Jackson Pollock, people know who that is. And we're talking about um, Joseph Beuys, who was really
Hmm.
famous for his ready-mades, as they like to call them. And, I don't know. I'm just trying to, think of
Hmm.
names as they're popping into my head here, but this is what we're talking about. We're talking about individuals who have that much influence on art history to be able to create this timeline. That now anyone that's going to study art history, they're going to have to check off those boxes of those particular artists. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking with it. I'm one guy with one guy's opinion, and
Hmm.
those of you that listen to our podcasts, you'll understand that that's true. I'm just one guy with one guy's opinion, and so are you, Timothy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm one guy with a lot of opinions, but no. But you brought up the art world, whole gallery world, and all that. There's definitely an enigma surrounding that. I mean, it's a very mysterious sort of thing, and a lot of people are trying to crack that nut, so to speak. And it's obviously very competitive, and a lot of artists. One thing we can probably discuss going forward is how to be, you know, um, there's no real one way to get exposure. You can, I mean, I would say just for any artist, I mean, as far as that's concerned, just try to enter stuff in the shows and all that but the whole mystery about trying to get represented by a gallery and all that, I guess that's something that we can try to confront and discuss, going forward. But yeah, as artists, it's we've chosen a competitive sort of you know, career here. But as you as an instructor and me as an instructor, not as deeply rooted as you, but I am one. And but I think that that's definitely you know, it helps to be exposed to so many different people that way. And we have a lot of friends that we can bring in to talk with our classes if we wanted to, or even on here. Um, but we have that experience and that breadth of knowledge of being an instructor, and we also learn from our students too at the same time because they bring fresh perspectives to class all the time, as we see every day. And that's one thing that we're always learning, and I think it's just making our skills and our knowledge just that much more we're very adaptable to change, and I think that's made us stronger and just kind of more receptive to how things are around us. So yeah, and you've been through a lot. I've my life has taken a lot of twists and turns and stuff. So I've been able to see things a lot of different perspectives. I mean, I've heard all the dialects in the country. I've heard all the different words for different, for the same things. And how many times can you say, soda differently and submarine sandwich and hoagies and all that? It's like everybody has different words for the same thing. It's so funny. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's what makes all these layers of the agate kind of true. I mean, it's sort of a symbolic thing, but it's also a literal thing. And so that's why I think that we are going to bring this multi-layered, perspective to our talk here, and it's going to make it a really fascinating sort of series. And I'm really glad to be part of it with you, for sure.
Oh, likewise. And we can't wait for Terry Burns to join us.
Cannot wait for Terry Burns.
Terry,
You guys are going to
we
love him.
miss
He's
you.
wonderful. Yeah,
Get better soon so we could do
get
these
well.
podcasts with you and we can laugh and we can hear all of your wonderful wisdom when it
Yes.
comes to all the, especially the music scene, because we know Terry has spent a ton of time. He's garnished major awards, and they're not just like a leg with a lampshade on it. We're not talking about those type. We're talking about real deal major awards here in and around the city of Detroit as a person who is recognized and he knows the who's who of that community. So he's going to be bringing that whole thing in there.
Cannot wait for that. Cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be
Terry's a
exciting.
great guy, super nice guy, and I'm glad to know him, 100%. So oh yeah, I cannot wait for him to join us, and you folks will love him too. I promise. You will.
Yeah, so that's going to be exciting. And, one thing, talking about the East Coast where you're from,
Mhm.
and New York City, to be specific.
Yeah.
So here you are, I'm going to refer to you as someone who's sort of transplanted themselves from that part of our country to the Midwest, so to speak.
Hmm.
We'll call Michigan the Midwest. Some people argue that, but we'll call it the Midwest. And one big difference, I think, if I am, you correct me if I'm wrong, about that area and this area, is that when you're in a place like New York, you can
Hmm.
buy a really good hot dog on the street. But
Oh yeah.
in Detroit, you have to leave your where you're driving, you have to get out of your car and you have to go inside to buy a really good hot dog. Am I correct on this?
Yeah, you are correct. And New York, you really don't have to leave your car because most people don't have them. So you just come up, you just you emerge out of the subway and you go into a Nathan's, or you can go get guy on the street selling hot dogs. That's one thing about New York is that there are food vendors everywhere, and I mean in Manhattan in particular. I mean, sure they're in all the boroughs, of course, but Manhattan, that's all the businesses there, and yeah, tourists and everything. But you can in the wintertime, it's great. You can smell the chestnuts being roasted, literally, and it's just such a nice sweet smell. It's great. I mean, all the senses are really kind of elevated there, and yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can get a bagel at 6 a.m. You can eat your whole meal out of carts on the street. I mean, whole day's worth of meals. Not that you'd want to after too long, but I mean, there's always the running joke. I was like, the guys are inside these little carts, that actually are pulled by other cars, and like, I mean, they're in there all day. I mean, they never leave to use the restroom, or are they? It's like,
It does it
I mean,
does
you're just in
cause,
this little
yeah.
2x2 little booth the whole
Oh
day,
my
and it's like, oh
God.
my god, when are they
Yeah.
ever going to break? I mean,
There's
but
got to be some way where someone
yeah,
comes and, sits there for 5 minutes while they
they
run
they
to.
have to have a partner, but I mean, I'm never hanging around that long to see, so I'm just have to.
Oh my
But it's
gosh.
always the same guy whenever you go out. But the one
Yeah.
thing about those things too is like when you start seeing the same person every day, you develop a relationship with them. You learn their name, where they're from,
Yeah.
and you start making small talk and you start seeing them as like people as they are. They're not just, somebody just passing by. I mean, you're actually having an interaction with them. They're giving you food, you're giving them
Yeah.
money and a tip or whatever. And you start seeing them every day. They become familiar to you as you do to them. You start building up a trust and a rapport with each other. And that's one thing about that city. It's very transient. People come and go all the time. But I mean, every once in a while, you kind of click with somebody and it's really cool. And, but everyone has a history. They all came from somewhere to be there, and they're all looking to make their families better, give their families a better life, and and so you got to hand it to them. They're brave because I mean, I just came from a place that's 120 miles away, and they came from across the globe, and to do this, and in a very 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 different culture than where they're from, and so they're the brave ones, and that's like New York is another great example of the agate. It's just one thing. It's multi-layered, multicultural. Just like here, and so, but long-winded story to your question, yes, you can just go up to a car and get a hot dog. There are lots of other opportunities. I mean, I would get like lamb like wrapped in geez, I'm forgetting the word now. It's been a while since I lived there, but
Like
in
a
a wrap.
pita?
Yeah, I guess it's like a pita. Yeah, but it's lamb, and you have like this tzatziki sauce and all this stuff, and it's um it's great. I mean, I miss those times going out for lunch from my office and stuff, and running out there and getting a Coke or something like that, and just having my lunch, like sitting down in the park. And I mean, that was super fun, super unique for and all that. But I mean, and here it's different. I mean, a lot more people here drive. I mean, depending on cars, of course, it's the Motor City. I get that. Just that makes total sense. And but I mean, if I lived in New York 22 years, I can adapt to nearly anything. In this country anyway. So I mean, it was it's great, and I love it here. Family's happy here, and I just this is my home now, so I'm very very proud. And
Well,
go
so
Tigers.
when we're talking about New York,
Hmm.
it it's funny because my kids notice that so many shows and movies take place in New York City. And, we have a running joke about, oh, I have a great idea for a movie. It starts in New York City. And there's the tall and we just kind of like ramble on about, something that we've seen in a film already. And, but that being said, when you go to New York, you can't help but notice how the surroundings just influence you to want to create art. And I was wondering, whether that's writing or drawing or painting or theater or music. So I was wondering for you, coming here to this part of
Mm-hmm.
the United States, what is it about being in Michigan, as long as you've been here, that you find is something that inspires you to want to make art?
Hmm. Oh, that's great. Great question. Well, for one thing, I'd say the community here that I've kind of come across and found at the atelier is one thing, but all the natural surroundings here, for sure. I mean, Michigan is, I mean, nothing but coastline, okay, and all the UP too. But I found like the natural formations here. I mean, the rocks, Petoskey stones, which is very unique to Upper Michigan, the Upper Mitten. I did a whole series of that of drawings and paintings of Petoskey stones. And for those of you who don't know, out of the area, they're like this. I don't have one with me, but maybe next time I'll show it. But it's like these fossilized rocks that are from I don't know how many tens of thousands of years old, but they're old fossils, and now there's just billions of stones all over the place, like mostly in the upper coast of Michigan, and um, and they have these really unique sort of patterns on them, like circular patterns, but they have like hexagonal sort of things. It's just a really really neat looking stone, and people collect them. They'll find these things and they'll slice them up and have in another story of like cross sectioning something and seeing what's on the inside. It looks fat. These patterns are fascinating, and
Mm.
but I did a whole series of that, and you know, people wanted me to do more of those, but I had to move on to other things because I was like painting rocks and drawing rocks and painting rocks. And so, but it was, it's that was fascinating. I just love how that's very unique to here, and but I would say the natural environment here is beautiful. The coastline, water. I mean, outdoor activities is very, very, very big here. A lot of people camp. They go up north, so to speak, in the warmer months, and a lot of boating, fishing, and all that. So I would say nature, and I love how open and beautiful it is here. And you know, especially when you start moving further away from all the metro areas and stuff, it really opens up, and it's just a lovely place. And I think I find that inspiring. And what I would like to do is go out and do some plein air stuff with you and Terry.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I'm so
so
glad that we are bringing that up because, the weather's just starting to hit that peak where we'll be, comfortable. Not that artists have to be comfortable, but you know what I mean. It's going to
yeah.
be a little bit less intense with the temperature so that we can hang out there and do something and feel good about it.
Hmm.
But I agree with the nature component of Michigan. I remember moving back from New York and getting an apartment, an upper flat in Grosse Pointe, where I had windows on two walls, so I could sit in my couch and almost get this panoramic view of these really old, beautiful, giant trees that were lining the neighborhood. And it for 3 months I sat there staring at these trees as if I was watching television because
That's nice.
because it was like such a difference from where I had been, saturating myself in this urban
Hmm.
landscape. But what I like about the contrast to all that beautiful nature is, of course, it's no secret that Detroit, uh, over the last 50 years, has been on the rebound in terms of making a comeback from, you know, just some tough times where a lot of uh, structures were let go and were just falling apart. There's still a lot of that type of decay, as I like to refer to it, in and around Detroit proper. And, growing up in the city limits, taking the city bus to downtown Detroit when I was a high schooler to take classes at the College for Creative Studies. Just the surroundings were so different then than they are now in that area, the cultural center. And I think I didn't understand it at the time when I was in high school, that component was going to mean a lot to me for my artwork, until I embarked on my master's program. Before I went to Wayne, I got accepted to Cranbrook, which is in Bloomfield Hills. And I was trying to make my art in this very pristine, natural surroundings. And I just was having difficulty. And so I ended up dropping out of Cranbrook to go to Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a common story that you hear from artists. It's usually maybe the opposite of that, but I needed to get back to the inner city and some of, what I
Mm-hmm.
like to classify as the grit and the
Yeah.
grime of the inner city that New York also possesses. So, there's something fascinating to me about that part of this state that you do find it in pockets of places like Flint or Saginaw, and certain Pontiac, for example, where you have some of that same type of thing. But it just, I don't know, it moves me, it gives me this inspiration to create. So I was wondering if you've experienced any of that.
Well, what I've experienced is um yes, I've gone through transitions in time of like what I was looking for in life. Like when I was younger, I certainly loved the energy and urban environment was something that drew me in and all that. And you know, it, once your life starts changing and stuff, and your needs start changing, and when you feel like that, you're kind of um, maybe had sort of the opposite effect, maybe the same effect you had initially, but then I missed being you know part of nature, and it's like just being closer to nature and things. And I really needed that because I was growing up, I had a lot of that around me because I grew up in a suburban slash rural area, and so where like housing was just being built, so we had a lot of like you know just natural lands around us before it was developed and all that. So as kids, we used to go out and play and all that stuff. So, and but then it always started getting the sprawl was always moving out, and but then as I got older, I started seeing more things around the country and stuff like that. And I love the urban environments and everything. I just wanted to be part of the energy. And so I think over time, after all that, I started, I had a family and everything. It started just kind of grating on me. I wanted to be kind of away from all that because it didn't have the same appeal to me anymore. So I think that what I I like was I'm kind of in a point in my life where like I want to be back out in nature where it's quieter and things. And so I guess if I'm going to parallel any of that, I would say that yes, I was there's definitely like an ebb and flow about the appeal for me to be in like urbanity versus kind of serenity. And so it kind of is sort of like this balance and kind of yin yang thing. I need to find a balance where it can't be too much of one thing. It has to be. I like both because I certainly like to go downtown and have a great time. Like a
Yeah.
week or two ago, we had a friend come in from town and we took her up to this rooftop bar, and I love that stuff. I mean, with the skylines there, and it was really fun. It was right downtown. There's a lot of activity, a lot of noise downtown. It was like a lot of stuff, and I love that the energy. I can dig that and stuff, and and I mean, I like to visit and go into in the city and everything else, but I like to come back home where it's my sanctuary and all that. So, but I mean, it's kind of like a give and take kind of thing, and what I've seen, like, you're a native Detroiter, and I love that. And, I've been here 12 years, like I said, and I've seen a lot of change in just that amount of time since I've been here. I know in your lifetime, you've seen a lot and happening. And, but I think in the last 12 years, I've seen such an incredible improvement of things. It's just, it's pretty stunning, and I love going downtown to see a baseball game. You know, haven't seen a basketball game in Little Caesars yet. We did go to the Palace a few times, but that's long gone now. But um, I just going downtown. I've gone to many shows downtown. To the Fox, Fillmore, all these other places, and Masonic, which is an incredibly beautiful building. I mean, I think I've been in every theater inside that place, but every time I go there, I'm in a new theater watching a show. I just like, how many rooms does this have? It must be like 500 rooms. It's just that this building is amazing. And but I've been
It
there several
is.
times for many different reasons. And I just love all these jewels that Detroit has, and I've only scratched the surface. I mean, there's so much more out there off the beaten track. Like move away from Woodward, and there's probably a whole lot more out there, and you know, so that's what I want to explore. I'm going to explore like really, a lot more what Detroit has to offer, and I know that's growing. It's growing a lot, especially downtown, and things are really um, getting really, really good there. And I'm glad I'm here during that time to see all this and experience all this. And and during your lifetime, you've seen a lot of change down there. Like I never went to the old Tiger Stadium. That was gone before I was here. Silverdome was here when I got here, but it wasn't. I don't think it's being used anymore. And they imploded that a few years ago. I could actually hear it from my house, and yeah, and I'm a good 8 miles away, at least. Yeah, and so and the Silverdome actually has a storied history too. I mean, how many famous bands used to played in that stadium? I mean, aside from obviously football, but there are a lot of famous shows that were there, and they're still like they're on YouTube now. You can find them, you know. And so a lot of history here, and a lot of famous things that happen here. I just like the history of the place, and I like the whole agate sort of metaphor about it. And one thing I like to do too is I always like to investigate the history of an area, and being like where I'm from, the country, and that's like the original, like where the colonial sort of settlements happened and all that, and has a England ruled over those colonies for all that time and all that. So a lot of Revolutionary War stories are all nearby where I grew up and all that, and we always heard all that. I mean, of course, I was close to Philadelphia, so I was there for the bicentennial. At the time, you could actually touch the Liberty Bell in those days, and that's how old I am. Now it's behind glass and bulletproof glass, and who knows, cops. I don't know with the security around it, but yeah, you could go up and touch it at some point in the past. And Philly was just a half an hour drive away, so it was easy to get there. But I always liked knowing the history and like how it started and all that stuff. So I started looking into how Detroit was founded and everything, and of course, the natives were all over the place here first, but there was, the native sort of, tribes and all that. But there, when the Europeans started settling here and all that, and they came up like for the beaver trains and all that and everything. So, and then it was being claimed by England. There was France and all that. So it was going back and forth. And Fort Detroit was built. And I don't know if there's any remnant of that left downtown, but it's right down on 4th Street, like the original where it was. I think it's a courthouse there, court building where it stood. But I like seeing how old drawings are of cities and how it relates to what it looks like today. Like Detroit had that big bluff coming off the river there, and now it's like that's where is it Jefferson Park? I'm not sure what park that is. It's right there. That's where all that was, and that's where all the shipping came into town, and it was all right there. But it's all been built over because they had to make a sort of like a pier there, a park there. And well, yeah, it's neat how you see these old 18th century maps or 16th, 17th century maps and how it looks today, and you can still see the old landscape hidden underneath everything that's built on top of it. So and that's one thing about New York too. I was always fascinated like what it looked like before everything was there, and you can definitely still see the topography of like the original landscape of New York, like underneath all those buildings, and so that's one thing too. I'm always fascinated by what it used to look like, and I just think it's a really interesting thing about it, and that's just part of who I am. So, but I like to connect myself back to between urbanity and nature, some sort of balance in between that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. This has been an awesome podcast, our very first podcast that we're going to put out into the internets. I like to say the internets because
interwebs.
Yeah, the interwebs, the internets, the intersphere. So we'll see if people discover Detroit Agate. We got to get Terry Burns in here in the studio, even though you're in Troy and I'm in Oxford, but our own personal studios.
Well, we'll have to send him somewhere between like Auburn Hills, and so we can
yeah.
But we'll get Terry. We'll get Terry in here, for sure. And I can't wait to hear his stories, because more of his stories. I've heard some, but I know there's a lot more to go. So
yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you, Eugene. Nice hanging out with you again.
Thank you, Timothy. Thanks to all of you that are joining us today, and we hope that you will come back and listen to another one of our podcasts where we will share more of the stories of both Timothy Smith, myself, and Terry Burns, and our connections together as artists and musicians and lovers of delicious food and culture, but also the things that each of us bring to the table in the mix of Detroit Agate. So we're gonna say goodbye. I'm Eugene Clark.
I'm Timothy Smith.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.